Okay, so Hollow Knight is one of the best indie games ever made, and because I'm a game developer who has played it for hundreds of hours, I wanted to see if I could remake it from memory. That means no playing the game, no looking at gameplay videos, and no googling of screenshots, just me and my memories of Hollow Nest. Oh, and because I thought that wasn't difficult enough, I also gave myself just 3 days to do it. Will the game I end up making be kinda close to the original, or will it just look nothing like it? I have no idea, but I guess we're about to find out. Okay, now obviously we're going to start by making the player, which means we need a white box, and we're just going to pretend that this white box is the knight. Now luckily the knight's movement set isn't too tricky, we just need to be able to move from left to right, add a button for jumping, and give it the ability to attack, which for now are just going to be these green rectangles. And even though this doesn't look anywhere close to the original, it's actually closer than you might think, because beneath all of the art, this is pretty much identical to the actual game. And even though this might look like something that you could never remake, when you reduce it to its core elements, it looks a lot more achievable. And this actually goes for all of game development. It isn't that it's hard, it's just overwhelming. But that's why I'm really happy to announce that this video is sponsored by GameMaker. Now, if you're looking for a game engine that is easy to learn and doesn't take years of programming experience to use, I would highly recommend trying GameMaker. It is one of the easiest game engines I've ever used. Literally within 30 minutes of me downloading it for the very first time, I was able to make a fully functional platformer with player animations, 2D movement, collisions, spikes, and even coins. For reference, this is the first ever game I made. It took me 2 weeks to make this. Needless to say, GameMaker was much easier, but then again, nowadays I have years of programming experience. What if you don't know how to code at all? Well, GameMaker also has a great visual scripting tool, meaning you can make entire games without writing even a single line of code, which is perfect for beginners. But probably the best feature they have for new game devs is the fact that it does everything. From being able to draw your player sprite to writing your code, all of it can be done inside of GameMaker. You literally don't need anything else. But even then, with all of that said, I still haven't mentioned the best part. It's completely free. You can literally start using it this very second without paying a dime. So there's literally no reason not to just try it. So if you're ready to start making games, you can download GameMaker right now for free by clicking the link in the description. Thank you so much to GameMaker for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. Okay, so the area I want to recreate first is the very start of the game. Specifically, I want to start by making the giant hole that you fall down before you actually get to start playing. One slight issue though, I don't actually know what it looks like. Like, I'm literally sitting here ready to draw, and I'm just realizing that I have no idea what any of it looks like. Now, I'm like 60, maybe 70% sure that the ground texture is like cobblestone, so I'm just gonna trust my gut and go with that. Okay, honestly, I don't hate it. Like, I could see the game having a texture like this, but I think adding color will do a lot. Now, I know that Hollow Knight's color is in reality like really detailed. I can't do that, so I'm just going very cartoony with it. Like harsh lines, no real transitioning, like no complicated nuanced textures, just like straight up colors. Although looking at this, I don't love it. In fact, I actually kind of hate it. Like, I'm pretty sure that nothing in Hollow Knight looks like this, which is a bit of a problem. Now, something else I could see Hollow Knight do is have like every rock be like an individual actual rock, because in the last texture I just kind of implied it with these bumps, but Hollow Knight feels like the kind of game where they would actually draw every single rock. And yeah, honestly, this feels much more Hollow Knight-y. But of course, last time it got ruined with the coloring, so let's not draw any conclusions. Although, I do gotta say, this feels much better. And yeah, now that I'm almost finished with shading, like, this is miles better. Like, this actually feels like it could be an in-game texture, at least from a distance, and my original one just looks like a kid's drawing. Now, of course, we do have to go and make the top a little bit more even, because it's supposed to be like a flat surface, but this is looking really good. Alright, there we go, and yeah, I'm really happy with that. Like, this could 100% be in the game, which means it's time to actually put it in the game. As you can see, I turned it into a repeatable tile, so we can connect them together to create one floor. Only right now, it looks looks really bad, and that's because it is just endlessly repeating the same texture. So we need to go ahead and make some alternative tiles. And this was really easy. You know, once I established the style, I just had to draw a bunch of rocks, which is really not that hard. And after just a little bit of work, we now have 2 more floor tiles. And if I did this correctly, all 3 of these tiles should form a coherent, but not just constantly repeating floor pattern. And honestly, I think it looks pretty good, which means it's time to move on to the rest of the environment. Now, I seem to remember quite clearly that there are these big shells in the background of this scene, but I don't actually know what they look like, which is a bit of a problem because I need to draw them. So what I'm just going to do is draw a big rock and add these little lines to it, which I'm pretty sure that some shells in Hollow Knight look like that, so I'm just going to hope that these shells do as well. Although I've got to be honest, now that I've actually made it, I don't like the way this looks at all. And it's not even because I think those lines were wrong. I do think that that's probably what they look like, but this just doesn't fit the style of the floor at all, and I feel like we're back in the child's drawing territory again, so let me give it another go. Okay, so I feel like a big problem with the last one was the lack of fine detail, because the floor obviously looks really detailed, and then the rocks behind it obviously need to as well. Everything needs to have the same level of detail. So for this one, I'm actually not going to do anything special. I'm just going to lower the brush size with the hope that just the finer lines will make it look more detailed and thus make it fit in more. Okay, yeah, conclusion. I don't see the difference. Between the last one and this one, I feel like this is pretty much just the exact same thing. Yes, it does seem a little bit more detailed because there are more brush strokes, but it's just so far removed detail-wise from the ground that it still looks insanely out of place. So I think we're scrapping that one as well. It's time for attempt number 3. Now for this one, I'm actually going to do something interesting. I'm going to divert from what I think the game actually looks like, because I'm going to add something that I don't think is in the game. First off though, I'm actually going to make the lines a little bit less perfect by adding just a little bit of thickness here and there, making the lines feel a lot more detailed and less cartoony. I'm also going to go ahead and add these cracks, which again I don't think are in the actual game. I think they are mostly just smooth shells, but I need some way of adding detail to these things, and this feels like the most realistic option because it just interrupts those big open spaces. Which, speaking of interrupting those, we're also going to be doing something different compared to the other twos, which is not adding highlights. Because one problem I had with the previous 2 is that they felt like they were on the same level as the ground. But obviously these are background textures. These are not things that are supposed to take the spotlight, so I think them being a little bit darker is actually a good thing. And I think removing the highlights altogether will make them seem more smooth and rugged, but also just less important and more of an afterthought. And I gotta be honest, I think all of those things worked. I actually love the way this thing looks. Is it what I think is in the game? No. But I think in terms of fitting the style of the game that we are making, I think this is the right decision. But of course the game doesn't have just one big shell in the background, it has tons of them. So it's time to make a couple of variants. And of course, having established the style of these things, they become much easier to draw because I don't have to figure out the way they're going to look, I just need to copy what I've already done, and that's really easy. So the second one took no time at all. And if we just go ahead and temporarily add this dark background, you can really start to see where this game is going. And I personally think it looks really cool. But of course, 2 of these shells is not going to be enough, so I'm going to go ahead and draw a third, which should give us enough variety to make the entire background. And for this one, I'm actually going to try to make it look different from the other 2 because those look pretty similar, but this one I really want to kind of stand out. So I went ahead and made it a lot smaller, and I also made the angle quite a bit different from the other 2, which seem to be angled almost at a 45 degree, but this one feels a bit more horizontal. And again, because we already established the style, this really didn't take too long. And there we go, we now have 3 pretty good looking background shells, which means it's time to try and recreate this vibe in the actual game. Now obviously the first thing we have to do is go ahead and make the background color a darker color, so that when we actually implement our shells, that part of the shell just completely fades away. But then we have to go and do something that was really easy in the drawing program, but is a little bit more tricky here, which is making them less bright, because as the shells go further back, we want them to appear darker. But if we just lower the opacity, yes, they do become darker, but you can also see the shells through each other, which is obviously not what we want. And so we need to find a different way of making them darker, which took a little bit of figuring out to do, but eventually I landed on this, which is to have a second identical object laid over the first one, which is just fully dark, like it's the exact same color as the background. What we then do is we change the opacity not of the object itself, but of the dark overlay. So the lower the opacity of that overlay, the brighter the shell is. And with just one shell, this looks identical to what we had before, but when we have multiple shells, you can see they're no longer see-through, they're just darker. So now all we have to do is just add a bunch more shells. I actually think this was really fun to do, just finding like the right composition of these things. And as we go like further back into the scene, I'm going to make the shells a lot bigger and also going to make them a lot darker, making them seem like really imposing in the background. And I just think that's an awesome effect. And so after a little bit of work, we now have this, which I actually love. I think that looks great. Now, of course, it's not perfect yet. It's very simple, I get that, but I do think that the vibe is here. But there is one very obvious thing ruining that vibe, which is the player, because currently it's just a white box. So it's finally time to go ahead and draw Hollow Knight's player, the Knight. Okay, so for just about everything else in this video, I like to record the voiceover of me making it as I'm doing it, right? Because I think that is more interesting than if I do it afterwards. But for this, I had to do it afterwards because this took me, and sorry for the profanity, fucking hours. Truly, like it is the next day and it is like decently far into the next day at this point. Like I don't know what it is about animating characters, but for some reason I just struggle with it so much. But anyway, let's actually talk about what I made. Basically, I tried to draw the knight like a bunch of different ways and I could never really get it to look right. So eventually I just settled on a design that I thought was fine, and then I just went ahead and drew what I thought the animations might be for the different actions that the player does. So I made this idle animation, which was probably the easiest one because there's very little movement, but then I really did quite struggle with the walking animation, because at first I tried to make like a regular walking animation, but that just looked really weird and it felt like there was not enough movement. And especially like if you're in a fight, like if you're doing a boss battle, it would be really weird to be walking around like this. So I had to transform that into a semi-running animation, but the problem with that is that I don't remember the knight actually running. Like whenever I play the game, I don't feel like he runs at all. I feel like he's just briskly walking, but that is such a difficult thing to animate, especially when you're already bad at animation. So eventually I landed on this, which I don't actually think looks that good, but trust me when I say this, it took me 2.5 hours just to make this. So I could go on for hours and hours and hours more, but I don't have the time. I only have 3 days to do this. I could spend 3 days just on this animation alone. So, you know, we're just going to deal with it. I think it's good enough. But yeah, I really struggled. An animation that I struggled less so with was the jumping animation, which although it was still quite tricky to get right, I did like remember how the knight jumps. So that was much easier. Like I remembered, oh yeah, he does 1 foot up like that and 1 foot down like this. And so I think the jumping animation is probably the best animation I made for this, even though again it's not perfect, but you know, I don't have forever to do this. But then the animation I feel a bit insecure about, but I don't know if it's because it's wrong or just because it's a bit of a weird animation, and that's the attacking animation, because I don't think I've done anything that is truly wrong. Like the only thing I would say is probably wrong is just how big the slash is. Like it looks really small here, but I can just easily make that bigger in the actual game. So I think that everything should be fine, but because there's only a few frames, it does look a bit weird. And as for the up slashing animation, that one is pretty much a carbon copy of the side one. I just changed where the nail goes and I made him look upwards, which is all there is to it. But again, because it's such few frames, if you just look at every individual one, it looks a bit weird, but I think overall in the actual game, it'll probably be fine. So let's go ahead and put this into the game. Okay, so I went ahead and imported all of the animations. As you can see here, like everything is fully animated, and I also wrote the code so that the right animations are displayed at the right time. So now if we click play, we should see a fully animated player. All right, let's see. There we go. Okay, I think this is my first time seeing it as well. It's a bit clunky, of course. It's not as good as the actual game, but honestly, I imagined it'd be worse. I mean, the attack currently still has the green box over it, so that's not entirely clear how that looks. But overall, like, I don't think this is that bad. Maybe it's a bit slow, but honestly, I don't mind it. This looks pretty good. However, I am noticing something quite blatant, which is that if we if we jump like this, our entire body basically disappears because the body is made of the same color as the background and every other dark color in the game. In the actual game, this is also the case, right? The body is the same color as the background, which is black, but the reason the player doesn't disappear in the actual game is because they have a light that is always behind the player. So everything behind the player always lights up, and that creates that contrast. So let's go ahead and also do that in our game. Alright, so I just went ahead and added some very simple lighting to the game, which are basically just a bunch of blurs in different configurations, but I do think it gives a pretty nice effect. However, you might be wondering why I didn't just use actual lights, because obviously those do the exact same thing, but you'd think they do it better, right? But the reason I didn't is because, as you can see here, the lighting does light up the object, but not the background, meaning the entire illusion is immediately lost because this obviously looks really bad. Like, these are supposed to fade into the background, and if they don't, well, it just doesn't look very good. But even without using actual lighting, I do think that this all looks pretty good. And of course, right now when we jump in front of the dark background, you can see the body very clearly. In fact, we never lose track of the body ever again because it always stands out really well. So with that problem fixed, it's time to move on to the next thing we have to do, which is drawing a bunch of shells. And the reason we're doing this is not because I happen to love shells, it's because I am like 80, maybe 90% sure that the walls in this area of the game are just a bunch of shells stacked on top of each other. So the easiest way for me to mimic that is by just drawing a bunch of shells and then in the game using those to decorate the walls. And here we are, a bunch of shells. Now I don't know if this is going to be enough, but I feel like this will get us pretty far, and if it doesn't, then we'll just add a couple more. For now though, let's go ahead and put these into the game. Now the trick to making these look good is to try and fully hide the edges of the wall, right? We don't want to ever see that the wall is basically just a square. So yeah, let me go ahead and decorate these walls and I'll show you when I'm done. Alright, here we are, and I gotta be honest, I really quite like this. I mean, yeah, it looks a bit chaotic, like there isn't really a structure to it, which, to be fair, there isn't. Like, that was kind of the point. The only thing that I think is wrong is that they're probably smaller in the actual game. Like, these are quite big, especially compared to the player. But otherwise, I do think that this is pretty accurate. Like, even in the game scene itself, it looks really quite good. Like, is it perfect? No, of course not. But like, for what I was trying to go for, I am pretty damn happy with how this looks. And just like generally, I feel like this is the right vibe. However, one thing you might notice is that I made it quite a bit taller than you can see in the actual game view, right? It just ends right here, but I made it till about there, and that is because we are finally making the very first thing in the game, which is the fall. So, you know, let's actually make that. Let's make the player fall down. Okay, so I went ahead and wrote two very simple scripts, one that just generally follows the player, which we're also going to use for the rest of the game, and one specifically meant to handle this very starting portion. And if I've done everything correctly, we should now see the player fall down, and the camera should follow the player. So let's see if I made any mistakes. Okay, we're falling down, the camera is following, we hit the ground, and there we go. I mean, that's wonderful, isn't it? Like, that's exactly what we wanted. And there we go. We also are able to follow the player now with the camera. And yeah, I mean, this all works. I mean, honestly, I wasn't expecting it to, but there we go. And this is the first time we're actually just moving around the game with the camera following us. And to be honest, it doesn't look any worse. It just looks the exact same, maybe even a little better, to be honest. But obviously, like, one thing that looks a bit weird right now is this area, because, well, there's nothing here. And so let's go ahead and add the breakable doors that are supposed to be in this part of the game. Now, I gotta be completely honest, I don't know what these doors look like. I just know that there are breakable, like, barriers that we need to, like, hit and then break them and then go through to the rest of the game. That's the only thing I know. And this is my best possible interpretation of what that looks like. Is it what I think is in the game? No chance. Like, not a single chance that this is what it looks like. But this is kind of like the vibe I got from what I seem to remember of these, like, barriers, which is basically just rope. That is all I remember. Like, I seem to be able to remember that there is some kind of like rope involved, or at the very least that it feels like it is being held together, and that you hitting it is just basically destroying something that was already pretty vulnerable. And I feel like this kind of captures that. Like, it's just a bunch of rocks stacked on top of each other with some rope. And so I think that'll probably work. I also made these, which are basically just the door frame. Now in the game, they're obviously not going to be this far away. They're probably going to be like this, and then the other one is going to be like that or something. Like, it's going to look like an arch that this thing is like in, but to like show it off, I just separated them real quick. But yeah, again, I don't think that this is actually in the game, but this is like the best that I could do. So let's go ahead and add this door. And here it is. Yeah, I mean, it's just right there. You can see if we go into the actual game that we can go and we can walk towards it, and then if we hit it, it disappears. And that's just kind of how these doors are going to work. But right now I do want to focus on making this one just a little bit better, because obviously right now when we hit it, it just disappears, and that's not very satisfying. So let's go ahead and make that look a bit better. Alright, so what I've done is I've separated this sprite into loose rocks. You can see them here. I made 4 of them because, I mean, well, there's 4 right here. And what we can do now is when we hit the door, we can spawn those 4 rocks and just kind of throw them that way, which makes it look like we are, you know, destroying the door. And having made that, it looks like this, which, I mean, that's pretty good. Again, it's not what's in the actual game. Like, it probably looks nothing like the actual doors in the game, but I mean, that was pretty satisfying to do. But what's going to be even more satisfying is hitting all of these doors as you move through this tunnel, which is also a thing that the actual game does, and it is genuinely one of the most satisfying things to do in the early game. So, you know, even though you've already seen how the door works, let me show you how this looks just for fun. Alright, you guys ready? Because I am. Here we go. Bam. Next one. Bam. Bam. There we go. This is a long one because there's going to be an enemy here, but bam. There we go. I mean, there's going to be a room here, so there's going to be something here at the very least. But I mean, that's good. I love that. Yeah, so, but like I said, there's going to be an enemy right here. So I actually think we're going to go ahead and just make that enemy right now. Okay, and here's the enemy I made. Now again, this is from memory, so I don't know what the original looks like, but I feel like this is pretty close. Like, I know that he's got like, I don't know, ridges. Like, he is a little bit spiky. I know that for sure. I also know he's pretty dark blue, and I also know they're everywhere in the starting area of the game. So that is all I know, and this is my best approximation of that. Now, if you have what it actually looks like and you compare it to this, it's probably going to be off, right? There's probably going to be things that I missed and things that are going to be blatantly wrong. But yeah, this is the best I could do. I also animated it. However, I am not that happy with the animation, and I think you can see why. Yeah. Animating is not my strong suit. I think I've made that pretty clear. However, we are going to keep this because I don't think I can improve it. And, you know, from a distance, it's not the worst thing in the world. So let's go ahead and put this guy into the game. And here we are. As you can see, I added both the animation, you know, one of the worst animations I've ever made, and also some very simple code to just make it move from left to right until it reaches a certain point, and then it turns around. You know, it's literally one of the simplest enemies I could possibly make. But if we go ahead and play the game, we are now able to hit it. You know, that's it. Like, it doesn't really do anything else. Like, we can hit it, we can kill it like this, and you know, that's about it. But then again, it's literally the first enemy in the game, and it's basically supposed to teach you that there are enemies and that you can kill them. So, you know, this will do. But, you know, in the actual game, of course, the enemy is not going to be right here because this is where you land and there's not supposed to be enemies in this area. So I went ahead and put him exactly where he's supposed to be, which is in this tunnel. And if I'm not mistaken, there we go. There's the little guy, and we can now go and kill him because what happened there? Okay, well, that's not supposed to happen, but I also have no idea what caused that. Anyway, like I said, it's supposed to be here, and it's not supposed to shoot up in the air when I hit it. And then, you know, when we move on, obviously there's going to be a big room here. And I'm a bit distracted, sorry. You know, let me see if I can fix this. Give me a sec. Okay, does it still happen? No. Okay, that's really weird because, I'll be completely honest, I didn't do anything. I didn't change a single thing. And now it does work. Anyway, like I was saying, here is obviously where there's going to be a big room, but obviously right now there is quite literally nothing here. So let's go ahead and actually build this room. Okay, and here's the room I built. Now, if you look carefully, you might actually be able to notice something, and especially if I go ahead and zoom out a bit, you definitely will notice something, which is the fact that these rooms are identical. I literally just copied everything that was over here, flipped it, and then just put it over there. And the reason I did this is because adding all of these shells took me literal hours, and because I didn't want to spend hours making a second room when, to be completely honest, when you're in the actual game you can't really tell that it's just a duplicate. I thought this was just a better way of doing this. And like I said, when we're in the actual game, I mean, you can't really tell. This just looks like a brand new room with different stuff in it. It's also a bit bigger, so that helps. But yeah, you don't see this as like, oh, he just ripped off the other room. No, this is just another room. However, one thing that is very much missing from this room is verticality, because of course in the other room you fall down and that is the way that you get down there, but here in this room we're supposed to go up, and the way we're supposed to do that is with these little platforms, but obviously we don't have those right now, so let's go ahead and make them. Okay, so here's a sprite for a platform that I drew, and I gotta be completely honest, I have no idea if the game actually looks like this. I feel like this might either be really close or really far away, because I took quite a big leap in just assuming that this was kind of a bit chaotic and that it wasn't like fully just this ground texture, but instead had something else going on, because I seem to remember that, but like that memory could be of something totally different. So, you know, either I nailed it or I didn't. Either way though, if we don't consider what the actual game looks like, I do think that this looks pretty decent. So let's go ahead and put this platform in the game. Now, I gotta be honest, this really isn't that interesting. I just added 4 platforms and that's it, because to be honest, this is the only other room that we're going to be able to make, because we just don't have the time to make more. So all we can really do is just make them go up a bit, and that's it. So I added these 4, and that's probably good enough. Like, they look pretty good in the actual game. They're just platforms, you know, there's nothing really that special about them. You can jump them, of course. I did measure out that you would be able to jump on all of these, and yeah, that's about it. I don't really have anything else to say. But of course, these platforms are here for another reason besides just going to the next room, which is for fighting the next enemy we're going to make, which is the Vengefly. Now, I gotta be honest, compared to the other enemy, I am really pleased with the way this one looks. Like, this has got to be incredibly accurate, because I actually remember these enemies very well, and I do think that they are quite distinctive. They're also quite small, so they don't have a lot of details. But yeah, this has to be insanely accurate. If it's not, then I genuinely do not know what anything looks like in Hollow Knight, which might be the case. You know, this entire video I might just be making stuff up. I also made an animation for this one, which I'm also quite pleased with. It's a very simple flying animation, but like, this is what I think they do. They just flap their wings and their beak probably moves a bit, but that's about it. Like, there isn't much else I can do. But yeah, I'm really pleased with this one. Like, especially compared to that other enemy, this is just a masterpiece. So let's go ahead and put this guy into the game. Okay, so this enemy was just a tiny bit more complicated than the other enemy, just purely because this one actually tries to attack the player, whereas the other enemy just kind of walks back and forth. This one will detect whether or not the player is within the attack range that I've got in the script here, and if it is, it'll fly towards the player. That's it. That is the very complicated logic behind this enemy. So let me just very quickly show you what that looks like. Alright, so as you can see, I'm currently out of range, right? Because he's just kind of flying there. He's chilling. He's not worried about me. But then when I get too close, there you go, you can see he'll start chasing me. You might also notice that his animation is just a little bit quicker when he's in this state, so it actually looks like he has like sped up. He was in relaxed mode before, and now he's in attack mode. Of course, we can kill him rather easily because it's a very simple enemy to beat, but still. So let's go ahead and actually put this guy in its proper place. Alright, so here in the actual room, you can see that I've got the first enemy right here, then there's the second one up there, which we can kill like this, then a third one should be all the way up here, there we go, which we can kill like this, and that's that. I mean, it's very simple. Again, these are basically tutorial enemies because that's the area of the game we're making, but you know, I still think we did a good job making them. And just overall, like, I am very pleased with how this game turned out, especially because that's 3 days. Like, this is officially the final version of the game, which I am not mad about at all. And like, before we go and actually compare what this looks like compared to the original, I just want to say that I am incredibly proud about what I've made. Is it perfect? No, but I think it captures the vibe of Hollow Knight very well. Like, just take a look at this and tell me that this is not what Hollow Knight feels like, right? It just does. And I don't think I could have done a better job capturing that. So yeah, I'm incredibly pleased, I'm incredibly proud, and now it's time to just completely shatter that illusion and go take a look at the original. Okay, so obviously we have the cutscene, and then, oh wow, it's so much lighter. I didn't remember it being this light. It's also way more detailed, I'm noticing that now as well. Like, it is much, much brighter than I thought it'd be. Like, my version of the game is quite dark and moody, but no, like, it's pretty bright. I was right about the big shells in the background, which I'm pleased to see, but mine don't look anything like that. So, you know, I kinda got it. And what are these doors? Oh, wow, like, that is not what I remembered at all. These look so different. And I mean, I think you can tell that they look very different just from how I made my doors. I mean, they do break, obviously, I did remember that, but they don't look like a bunch of rocks stacked on top of each other with rope. Like, they just look like cracked barriers, which I did not remember. Of course, yeah, there's an enemy here, I did remember that. And at the end of the tunnel there is like a big room. Oh, and there's also one of those crawling enemies here. And of course there are the vent flies. Yeah, I think overall, I'm not too mad about that. Like, if you just look at the games side by side, I don't think it looks that close, but like, there's a lot of elements that I did get right. And just again, overall, I think the vibe is very good. I think I genuinely can be very proud of what I've made. So, you know, I hope you enjoyed watching me make this. I certainly enjoyed making it. You're free to like the video if you want to. You can subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.